I was on the under the impression I unmuted everybody. Hello, this is Shelby Shadwell, Wyoming Promise Treasure.
Hello, Shelby. It's Vanda.
Hi, Vanda. And it looks like we have Tessa and Pam and Sarah on the call as well.
Hi, Shelby. It's Pam.
Hi.
Hello.
Thanks for joining.
Hi there. This is Tessa. Yes. Do I need to mute my phone?
No, you don't. I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody because we do expect quite a few people on the call. But thank you for joining us, and thanks for all the hard work you have been doing, everybody, here in the state. It's so important. So really, thank you for joining us. Again, I'll keep everybody on mute here at the initial stages of the call, but you can always press 1 or 2 or any number on your dial pad, and that will show that you've raised your hand, and we can unmute you to get you on the call. And I'm going to go ahead and unmute Ken Chestek, our chair of Wyoming Promise, as other folks join on the call. And again, thank you everybody for joining us. It's amazing what we've been able to do in so few months. I can't believe it's only been less than a year since this effort has started. So thank you everybody across the state for joining us. Again, Ken, I've got you unmuted, so if you want to say anything, feel free as other folks join the call.
Yes, thank you, Shelby, and thank you for organizing this call for us. Welcome to everybody. We're still a few minutes away from the beginning of our meeting, but I want to echo Shelby's thoughts, comments for saying how far we've come in such a short period of time, thanks to a lot of the people on this call right now. Shelby and I both can see the list of people who are on the call. I see Senator Simpson is on the call right now, too. He's going to be our first speaker. But let's wait a few minutes until we have a very large number of people who signed up, and people are jumping on the call as we go forward minute by minute. So we'll wait a few more minutes, let people join, and then I'll see a few things, and we'll turn it over to Senator Simpson.
Yes, and again, everybody is muted right now, just to make sure we organize the call correctly, including Senator Simpson. But we will unmute people as we go forward. And if you would like to be unmuted, please just press a number on your dial pad, and that will sort of raise your hand on our visual interface, and we can get to your comment or question as we move through. Again, thank you all for joining the call. We got a great number of people that are just now joining, so thank you for being on here. This is really an amazing thing that you're all joining us, and all of the work you've done across the state in such a short period of time is amazing. Ken, did you want to introduce Senator Simpson at all, or?
Yeah, let's wait a minute or two. It's only 6:58 right now, but I think everybody knows Senator Simpson, our former U.S. Senator from Wyoming, very well known around the state, still very respected. Also somebody who has been extremely active and very vocal about the issue of money in politics and how money has destroyed our political system. So we're going to turn to him first in a few minutes. Like I said, people are still jumping on the call. This is going to be probably one of our biggest calls ever, I think. We're already up to 20 people, I think, 19 people, 20 people now, and they're still jumping on. So we're going to have a good turnout, and love to hear Senator Simpson's thoughts when we turn to him in just a few more minutes. But we'll just wait a few more minutes, and then let Senator Simpson. What we're going to do first is we're going to hear from Senator Simpson, let him give us his thoughts on the need for this reform, and then how all of us can help bring about this important reform. After we've heard from Senator Simpson, we'll have an opportunity. He's very graciously agreed to take some questions. So as Shelby has been saying all along, when we get to the question and answer session, if you want to have a question asked, press 1 on your keypad, and on the screen that Shelby and I are looking at, your hand will go up, and we'll be able to call on you by name, and we'll unmute you, and you can ask your questions. After we've had the question and answer session from Senator Simpson, Mary Beth Baptiste, one of our organizing steering committee members, is going to give us some thoughts on how to get letters to the editor published. So we're in a spot now where we're really working the next month or two to continue our efforts on education and calling attention to the need for this. We'll refocus our efforts on signature gathering when the weather gets a little better and there's more events to go to. But we're taking the next month or two really to do more education, and Mary Beth will help us learn about some ways that people on the call can help us by doing letters to the editor. And then I'll have a few comments as well at the end about where we're at in the process and where we're going to go. We are going to continue working through 2018 to make sure we get this on the ballot. We are very confident that we can do that with all the great work and assistance from all the people on this call and many others. We know we're going to accomplish our goal. So it's 7:01 right now, and for those of you, we're up to almost 40 people. This is one of our larger calls, and I really appreciate everybody who's jumping on the call right now, where they're still growing. Thank you all for joining the call tonight. And as I said, if you just joined the call, I'm going to introduce Senator Alan Simpson. All of you know our former U.S. Senator from Wyoming, living in Cody now, and a very vocal and energetic supporter of getting money out of politics. We're going to let Senator Simpson speak for a few minutes, and then, as I said, there'll be a question and answer period, and we're looking forward very much to hearing what Senator Simpson has to say. So I have now unmuted Senator Simpson. Senator Simpson, the mic is yours. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining our call, and we are very excited to have you give us some inspiration on this issue that's been very important to you and to all of us. Go ahead.
Well, Ken, thank you so much. And you can call me Al. You don't have to call me Senator. I've been called everything. You can't imagine having a life where you've been called everything that's possible. I'm a little croaky, a little cold. I have no fever. You can't catch it through the phone. But nevertheless, it's a treat. And Shelby, thank you for what you do. And I heard you talking about all that electronic stuff. Meant nothing to an old coot like me, but it was nice to know that you can throw up your hand and be recognized. But let me just say that this is a great cause. I've been the master of lost causes. I've been in immigration, and everything I touched in Congress was filled with emotion, fear, guilt, or racism. Veterans benefits, Social Security, immigration, nuclear power, nuclear proliferation. So it's always fun, and it's wonderful to be 86 and to achieve life's ultimate goal, because I've effectively pissed off everyone in the United States. But it gives a guy a good feeling. But you're on the right track, let me tell you. And Ken, thank you. This is a big bipartisan push. This doesn't have anything to do with politics. The enthusiasm is there. This case, I'm an attorney. I loved it. 60 years of practicing law this year. Loved it. Can never understand how the U.S. Supreme Court could come up with a decision which effectively says that a corporation is a person under the language and the coverage of the First Amendment. This is so absurd because the First Amendment was put on the books after the gentlemen finished their work. And don't forget, when they were meeting in Philadelphia, they wouldn't allow the media within 100 yards of the building. How's that? What do you think the boys and girls think of that today? But they wouldn't. So when they finished their work, they said, yeah, but what are we going to do about some guy over there across the street in that basement in that brownstone who's cranking out seditious literature about the United States and what a Slavs we all are? We have to protect that guy. So that was they were protecting a single person. A corporation is not a person. And so they put the First Amendment on the books. And so when we're dealing with the 28th Amendment, we have to be careful of the First Amendment and be sure that we recognize that it cannot be hindered in any way. But I can only tell you that you have to, the people of America are so fed up that you can give unlimited money, you can give it anonymously, and the guy on the street, he's the guy who used to give $5 to the Dems or $5 to the Republicans. He's saying, what do they care about me? They don't care about me. So I see some fat cat threw in $20 million. Didn't even give his name. I see they formed all sorts of cute little PACs and organizations. It's not only demeaning to the man on the street. It's corruption, and he's disgusted. He or she are disgusted by this, and so you have to come. It's too bad we have to do a 28th Amendment, but the group American Promise, they meet. They've got tons of heavy hitters all meeting to see what the language should be, but the concept of the language is very clear, and it is simply a corporation. excuse me. A corporation is not a person under the First Amendment. And Ken, as you cite so well, the Wyoming Constitution clears that up so completely. It just says a corporation is a creature of the state. It's a tool of the state. It has nothing to do with a person. And so here we go, and we have not only the American Constitution on our side, but our Wyoming Constitution, which is, the boys and girls must have been up to something in 1890 because they really clarified what a corporation is, and it has no ability to be treated as a person under the coverage of the First Amendment. Well, there's enough to hang your hat on before I choke up and pass out. Well, actually, I'm not. But anyway, I think that's good enough.
Okay, thank you, Al. If anybody has any questions for Al, please press 1 on your keypad. I'll start first, Al. How do you think this petition drive is going over? We've been at this now for 8 months. We've got, 10,000 signatures, something like that. How is it being perceived out there? Have you heard about it from other folks? And how do you think the effort is going so far?
Let me tell you, around here we've got some wonderful people. And these are people often who haven't been connected with politics in any way. They just say, I've just stayed out of it. But this is too much. And we have a wonderful group here, and we have over in Sheridan. That's our neighboring over the mountain county. And I would say that when we're going to have one wonderful person who lives out at Heart Mountain, we're going to have a big gathering here soon, right here in the county, and we'll get over to Sheridan as the winter wanes, and it's heartening, and I don't know what's the figure we need on signatures. What does it come to? And it has to be in 2/3 of the counties and all this. I was in the legislature when they did it, and they made it stringent because they didn't want it ever used much. And boy, they did, I'll tell you. Enough of that.
Yeah, they made it very difficult. We need to have the total number is 15% of the last general election total. For Wyoming, that's 38,818 statewide, and you have to hit that 15% threshold in 16 counties. We have several counties now that are very close. Albany County is very close, maybe at their goal right now. A few other counties are coming along very well. Johnson County is doing fantastic, but we need 16 counties, which is why we're not going to be submitting these petitions to get on the 2018 ballot. We don't have enough yet, but in some counties we do, and we'll talk a little later on about how we're going to go ahead and complete the process. We do have county teams going in many places, and we're going to spend some time re-energizing them and get going. I think the last successful petition drive was 20 years ago, so it's hard to do, but I have very confidence that we're going to be able to do it. So we have several hands that are raised now. I'm going to go ahead and unmute Sarah Mentok up in Sheridan. Sarah, what's your question for Al?
Hi, thank you.
She's going to ask why I'm her uncle.
That's right. So I wasn't going to bring that up, but
this is an energetic lady of great proportion, and she's got people organized over in Sheridan County. Go ahead, Sarah. Shoot.
Well, I can't take credit for organizing this effort. I just came on about 6 weeks ago, but thank you for the compliment. So my question is, recently I was running around with my petition, and a lady said, well, what the hell's wrong with being anonymous? I mean, maybe I want to be anonymous. And I was sort of, I didn't have a very well-formed response for her. What would you have said to her when she says, what's wrong with this money being anonymous?
Well, if you want to throw in $200 and be anonymous, that doesn't bother me at all. But if you want to throw in $20 million and be anonymous, then the whole purpose of your being in is access to the President of the United States, or access to the system. And who are you? What is your purpose of this huge contribution? Just feeling generous and enlightened? No, you can't have this kind of thing, because then these people, you get into the White House, you get into the office, and somebody comes in the door and says, guess who's out here? I don't know who it is.
Right.
Well, it's old so-and-so. He gave you $20 million, or he gave you $5,000. Didn't want to know, but he's here. Well, send him in. You bet. Send him in.
Okay. Yeah. So it's a matter of motivation. You're not just trying to support someone. You're trying to gain access.
Well, of course. Don't you remember the trial of President Clinton had a trial, and they went to a hearing, and an Asian gentleman said he gave $300,000, and one of the interrogators said, "Why did you do that?" And he threw back his head and laughed. He said, "Are you kidding? Access. What the hell do you think I give it for?"
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay,
Well,
thank you.
Anyway.
So Tessa has her hand up. So Tessa, you're unmuted. Go ahead. What's your question?
Well, it's kind of a comment too. Thank you for doing this. I invited a lot of people to try to join in this phone call, but I think some of them are not really clear on exactly what the petition is. So if you could clarify that to everybody, I would really appreciate it.
Well, Ken could do that. He's on the ground, and he can explain just exactly what it is and what the petition means. 19 states have supported this concept already. That's pretty good, and there's more to go.
That's half of the states that would be necessary to ratify the amendment if it's proposed. So, Tessa, I think a lot of the people on the call probably do know what we're about, but for those of you who don't or are wondering what this project is, we are trying to get an amendment to the United States Constitution proposed and out to the states for ratification. The amendment would basically say that corporations are not people, money is not speech, and therefore Citizens United, which said both of those things are true, can be overturned, and we can get back to where we were before, where we actually did have some meaningful restraints on corporate donations and amounts of donations going to political campaigns. The goal line here is to have campaign finance reform that sticks. Citizens United basically declared unconstitutional the McCain-Feingold Bipartisan Campaign Finance Reform Act, which, as it said, was bipartisan. John McCain, the Republican, and Russ Feingold, the Democrat, were the primary sponsors of the bill, and it put into place some pretty good disclosure requirements, limitations on spending, ban on corporate spending. Citizens United said that's unconstitutional and violates the First Amendment because corporations are people and money is speech. And the only way to overturn the Supreme Court of the United States is to amend the Constitution. So we are trying to get through a citizens initiative put on the Wyoming ballot in 2020. The ballot question, should we have a constitutional amendment proposed so that we can overturn Citizens United. As Al said, 19 states have done this, 4 or 5, I'm not sure if it's 4 or 5 states have done this by citizens initiative, and we're trying to be part of that process. We are also working, talking to the legislature to try and get the legislature to do this on its own. Either way it happens, we want to get Wyoming on that list of states demanding this kind of reform because it is the current system completely contradicts Wyoming values. The Wyoming Constitution, as Al said, declares that corporations are creatures of the state, subject to control by the state. The Wyoming Constitution also says that that equal rights are guaranteed to all members of the human race. That's a direct quote. Members of the human race have equal rights. Corporations are not of the human race. They don't have equal rights with the rest of us. And that's the Wyoming promise that we are trying to enforce.
And the petition is just to get it to the ballot. And in other words, there is really, the language is close. I mean, there are several different varieties of the language of the constitutional amendment. The tough part of it is to be certain that you don't impinge upon the First Amendment. It all started years ago with a case called Vallejo out in California, where a guy, he just blew through all the money he had, and they said, well, this is unfair. This guy, and the court, unbelievably in that one, said, no, money is freedom of speech. There's no limitation on what that guy can cough up in the way of money. And of course, that was the beginning of where we are today. But this has reached an impossible time. And now you have these candidates who simply go around to the guys with the bucks and do kind of a pony act. You put on a little show, and then if big shot so-and-so from the Dems decides to give you some bucks, he will, or the Republicans, and they're out there. Everybody knows their names. You can't blame one side or the other. They're all loaded, and they know what power they have because they have the power of money, and which leads to corruption and disgust.
That's exactly right. Buckley versus Vallejo is the case that I was talking about. It was the first case that says money is speech. Several cases since then have gone beyond that and gone to corporations are people. And Citizens United is not even the most recent case. There's been several cases since then that have gone even further than Citizens United did. So this is a slippery slope that we're falling down very rapidly to the point where big money controls government and the little guy, his voice can't be heard. And that's what we're trying to stop. So last call, any questions from any of the participants on the call? Okay, and last question is from George Simonton. George, you're unmuted. What's your question?
Hey, I'm wondering what we know about where Barrasso, Enzi, and Cheney believe about this whole concept. Who knows, and what's their position?
George, I don't know. Maybe Ken has something on it. I can tell you one guy who thinks it's a mess, and that's Mitch McConnell. I mean, Mitch McConnell will fight every single, and of course he's the majority leader, he will fight every single effort in any way to get mother's milk of money out of the system. He thrives on it. He will do his last gasp like Custer to be sure that this kind of thing does not pass.
Yes, and I can answer George's question also about the current delegation. Several months ago, we did send a letter. Wyoming Promise sent a letter to all three members, Representative Cheney, Senators Enzi and Barrasso, telling them about of what we're doing, but also asking them to support several bills. There are several bills currently in Congress that would propose this amendment, and we asked all three of them to support any one of those measures that would create this amendment and put it out for the states to ratify. We got no response at all from Representative Cheney. We got no response at all from Senator Barrasso. Senator Enzi sent back a kind of non-committal form letter. Well, not a form letter, but it was a letter that basically said that if you want more information about finances, go to the FEC. The FEC can give you information, which kind of misses the point because these dark money groups don't file through the FEC. They spend independently, and therefore the FEC has no record of them, and that's the whole problem, is that we don't know who these people are. So Senator Enzi's response was kind of non-responsive.
What
so
can you do?
George.
Can you, Al, can you hear me?
Yes, I do.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I do.
Yes, go ahead, George.
Is there anything we can do to put some pressure on them? Is there anything further we can do than just writing the letters that you've already sent?
No, there are.
What would you say to that?
I think it's great, and personal visits with them are going to make a difference too. We haven't really started on the delegation, and I can tell you they will, as we say in the trade, they will be visited by three spirits. The first, the stroke of one.
Which
hey, thank you, guys. I really,
past, present, and future?
Al, I really appreciate you guys all doing this, and we're all for the petition.
George, you're a guy
Thank you, George.
It's not a spectator sport. Well, anyway, now I'm going to go cough some more, and thank you all for doing what you're doing.
And thank you, Al, so much for your support. It's been very important to our movement, and we look forward to working with you as we go through 2018 to keep getting the word out.
It'd be my great honor, and we'll have more to you as we get stuff down from American Promise, the national organization. We'll spread it out, but there shouldn't be any question about what the petition does. It's going to get us to the ballot, and that's the critical issue. So thank you for listening, and thank you so much for what you're all doing. It's a citizen thing. This is all citizen stuff on this baby, and it really, if this continues, we'll have in 10 years we'll have the $100 million president, and they'll say, well, who elected him, or at least who supported him? They'll say, well, there were 10 people, or 5, who put up 10 or 20 million each, and I guess they feel a little responsibility toward them. Anyway, it's a mess.
All right. Thank you so much, Senator Simpson, and you're welcome to stay on and listen if you'd like, but I want to move on now to the next topic on our agenda for tonight, and that is Mary Beth Baptiste. I'll unmute Mary Beth here in just a second. What we want to do, as I said at the beginning, for those of you who jumped in late, we're not close enough to be able to get on the ballot for 2018, but we had 18 months from the day the Secretary of State certified our petition to submit our petitions. We've used 8 of those months. We have 10 more months to go. And in those 8 months, we've built an organization. We've recruited a team of circulators. I'll talk more about that later. But we've discovered as we're out circulating that a lot of people don't really know yet what this issue is, or what Citizens United is, or why we're doing this. We're kind of in a down period with the weather so bad it's hard to get out and circulate petitions. We'll get back to the circulating early spring and hit it hard all summer to get the last of our signatures. But we can use these next month or two and really even on through into the summer, trying to get the word out about what we're trying to do and why this is so important. And one tool that we can use, we can talk to our Congress people, we can talk to our state legislators, but also we need to educate other people, other citizens, about why this is so important and how we can get the word out. So Mary Beth Baptiste is going to lead a little discussion now about how to get a letter to the editor published that talks about this issue in a way that resonates with ordinary voters. So Mary Beth, you're unmuted. Take it away.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for calling in. This is kind of a tough act to follow, but I'll give it a try. Like Ken just said, for a cause like us, it's really important to get regular and frequent information out. Wyoming Promise started with about 3 people, and in less than a year, we've grown to over 250 petition circulators, I believe, across the state. But still, there are a lot of people who don't know what we're about. So we can start to fix this with media coverage of our mission and goals in local papers across the state. Nowadays, there's a lot of other ways of disseminating information through blogs and social media, and so writing letters to the editor of a newspaper seems really old-fashioned. But surprisingly, writing a letter to your local paper is still an effective way to reach a pretty good audience, even with a small paper. So granted, a letter in the Basin Republican Rustler doesn't have the same sway as the Denver Post, but we can still get the word out in even those really small papers. Why letters are so important, even in small papers. Letters to the editor are published on the editorial page, which is one of the most read sections of the paper. And a lot of times, readers of letters to the editors will discuss things that speak to them from letters with their friends, so that generates interest in the community in a certain issue. And another thing, we were talking about the federal legislators before. State and federal legislators both are likely to check out letters in their local papers so they can see what's important to their constituents. So and I'll get into this later. Sometimes it's a good idea to mention a legislator in your letter because the legislator will then hear about it through his or her staff. So letters also show the editors how important certain issues are in their community. So the more letters they receive on a topic, the more likely they are to dedicate more space in the paper. So it's not likely that we're going to get a lot of broad coverage at this point, but letters are a really good way for us to just get out little pieces of information at a time in different places and educate voters about Wyoming Promise. And by the way, letters are published in both the print and online versions, so we have both of those covered. So the letter doesn't have to be overly complicated, just 2 or 3 paragraphs about Wyoming Promise and what we're about. But today I'm going to go through the process of writing and submitting a letter to an editor. And a lot of it's going to be obvious if you've done this before, but it's still good to review. I'm going to send a bullet list of my main points to Shelby after the call, and he will mail that out to everybody. So you'll have a list of notes. So writing your letter, before you even start, find out the word count from the newspaper's website. Now I know word counts, just the sound of it sounds really anal, but they're really important. And if you exceed the word count that the paper asks for, your letter will probably be ignored, or in the writing business we call it being relegated to the slush pile. In other words, ignored. So in Wyoming, the word counts vary from paper to paper from 250 to 400 words. And you can find the paper's word counts on their website. So you'd go to the paper's website and go to the Opinion tab and look under Letters to the Editor. And while you're there, also look on the website for the editor's name and the email address where you would email if you're going to email your letter. And sometimes papers have other guidelines for writing letters, and I'd just like to read a really good one I found from the Sheridan Press. So, and I'm quoting, "The Sheridan Press welcomes letters to the editor. The decision to print any submission is completely at the discretion of the managing editor and publisher. Letters must be signed and include an address and a telephone number, which will not be published, for verification purposes. Unsigned letters will not be published, nor form letters or letters that we deem libelous or obscene or in bad taste. Email delivery of letters to the press works best. Letters should not exceed 400 words. The best read letters are those that stay on a single topic and are brief. Letters can be edited for length, taste, and clarity, and we reserve the right to limit frequent letter writers." So that's some really good basic advice. You know, don't say anything obscene, and be clear, stay on a single topic. So I just thought I would share that with you. I also wanted to tell everybody about a really good resource that's available for the whole state. It's called the Wyoming Press Association. And their website is wyopress.org. And again, I'll put this in the list that I give to Shelby. So you'd go to wyopress.org, click on members, and then WPA members list. And it gives you a list of the member papers. And most of the mainstream papers in Wyoming are on this list. So you can find out all kinds of information about each paper, the contact information, editors' names, the website, circulation, subscription rates, all that kind of stuff. But the most important for us, obviously, are the editor name and the editorial email. There are other emails listed like advertising email and subscription email, so just stick with the editorial email and that'll get you to the editor, the main editor. And you'll notice on this website, the Press Association, that some of the smaller papers have the same, more than one paper has the same editor. For example, the Torrington Telegram and the Lingual Guide are both put out by the editor at the Torrington Telegram. And the Douglas Budget, Glen Rock Independent, and the Wright High Plains Sentinel all have the same editor. So you'll be writing to the same editor for a few different papers. And an aside, I've also noted that this WPA isn't always up to date, so it's still best to go to the paper's website, or you could even call them for the most current information, contact information. So when you get a word count, just jot down some notes on what you want to cover in your letter. Limit yourself to one or at most two main points. And maybe you're going to be writing in response to an article that ran in the paper. That's always a good thing to do, to generate discussion about something that say they had an article about Wyoming Promise. That would be a good way an excuse to write a letter to bring more attention to it. And if you're writing in response to an article, refer to the name of the article and the date that the paper published it. And again, if your letter includes the name of a legislator, in most cases, the legislator's staff will show him or her the letter. And this would be a good way to engage a legislator that you would like to take notice of your letter. So when you compose the letter, get to your main point in the first two sentences. And be sure and include some interesting things like especially any local connection to the issue. It's good to mention local events connected to Wyoming Promise, like a day of action or a local business where people can sign petitions. And try to include how this issue personally affects you. For example, I like my vote to count. It can be a simple statement like that. And another thing, this is really important, don't assume that readers know what you're talking about. For example, a lot of people have no idea what Citizens United is, or even what dark money is. So if you mention things like this, include a brief description of them. Try to keep the letter short, focused, and interesting. Write clearly with few adverbs or adjectives that can distract from the focus and make it sound wordy. You want it to be concise. And even though the word count might be 400, it's still best to keep the letter as brief as possible because nowadays, as we all know, people have short attention spans. And also stay positive. For example, we can do something about dark money, and this is it. When you end your letter, end with a call to action. Ask readers to visit wyomingpromise.org and sign up to volunteer. And I always include americanpromise.net also in my letters for more information. So then you're going to submit your letter. Now, a lot of the larger papers like the Casper Star and the Wyoming Tribune Eagle and the Laramie Boomerang have online submission processes for letters to the editor, but you'd have to check the individual paper websites. But the online submission tools are pretty self-explanatory. For example, the Cody Enterprise has one. You would click on Opinion, scroll to the bottom, and it says Submit a letter to the editor. And they ask for your contact information, and there's a box for pasting and uploading your letter. Some papers like the Douglas Budget ask you to open an account, but most papers just want you to enter your contact information and upload the letter. Now the smaller papers, of course, don't have an online submission process, but you can go to Contact Us on the website and they'll provide an up-to-date email address. Or you can call the paper also. I always email my letters. Papers always accept email. And again, use the editorial email address from the Wyoming Press Association list if you're using that. So to compose the email, in the subject line, write letter to the editor. Simple. And just start the email with Dear Editor or Dear the editor's name. And this is really important. Most editors don't like attachments. So cut and paste your letter into the body of the email. And then when you get to the bottom of your letter, be sure to sign your name and add your address, phone number, and email address. And they usually call to verify that it's really you before they publish your letter. And they only publish your name and hometown. They won't publish your private contact information like your phone number or your address. So another really good thing to do is to get to know the editor of your local paper and find out what kind of news about Wyoming Promise they'd be likely to publish. Ken and I had a really good experience here in Laramie. We went and had a meeting with Peter Bauman, who is the editor of the Laramie Boomerang. And we just asked him, what type of news would you be likely to print? And the biggest takeaway from that conversation is that editors want a local community angle. So, for example, news about local Wyoming Promise events, community members who are working on the initiative, stuff like that. And for example, if you had a day of action in your community, the week after you might send off a quick letter to the editor and say how successful the day of action was, thank the volunteers and the people who signed, and put in a little plug for us saying how their efforts will help bring back fair elections or something like that, And another thing you can do, I asked Peter Bauman if I could write a longer op-ed piece. Now, normally those are written by public people like Bill Sniffen and Bob Franken and other syndicated columnists, but I asked Peter just on a whim, and he said yes. So my piece was about 600 words, and it allowed me to go into greater detail about what Wyoming Promise is about. And it took up a pretty large section of the editorial page, so we got some good press with that. So talk with the editor and ask, and all they can say is no. So in conclusion, like I said, letters to the editors are one of the most extensively read sections of the paper, and they often generate discussion among the community members. So they're a great way for us to network and educate voters about Wyoming Promise. Write often and encourage your friends to write. It's good to have letters from many different people rather than the same people writing over and over, because as they said in the Sheridan Press blurb, that they have the right to limit letters from the same person. So the more people you can get to write, the better. Again, check the paper's website or the WPA for word counts and the editorial address. And limit your letter to one or two main points. Be clear and concise. Stay positive and end with a call to action, and include the Wyoming Promise website. And then call and meet with your editors, local editors, to establish a relationship and just ask for advice on what they'll print. And so that's it for letters, but I wanted to mention another really good tool to get some frequent media coverage in the local papers. And Albany County is doing a really good job of doing this regularly in the Boomerang, and that's because they advertise the Wyoming Promise meetings, which are every other week, in the paper's community calendar or local briefs section. Now, all papers have these, and it's free to post. So we've had a lot of people see those announcements in the paper, and it's pulled a lot of people into the meetings who wouldn't have known about it otherwise. So the notices are posted every other week, and sometimes they even throw it in a few more times than once a week. And every notice has the date, time, and the place of the meeting, and the contact information of whoever's leading the meeting or for more information. And I just want to read you the verbiage that goes out in every one of these. It's a nice little blurb about Wyoming Promise. So I'm quoting, "Wyoming Promise is a statewide, nonpartisan movement to get big money out of politics and bring back free and fair elections. The Supreme Court's 2010 decision, Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, gave free speech rights to corporations, opening the floodgates for unlimited campaign funding to influence elections. Wyoming Promise's goal is to place an initiative on the state's 2020 ballot to call on Congress to pass a 28th Amendment to the Constitution, which would roll back Citizens United and bring voting power back to the people," end quote. So every notice in the local briefs of the Boomerang has this mission and what we're about, and these are in the paper at least twice a month, so it's really good coverage. So that's about it. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. But thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mary Beth. For those of you who have questions, please raise your hand. I want to, and there's several hands going up already. I just wanted to add one comment, and everything. I agree with everything Mary Beth said. It's all great advice. But one thing to think about is topic selection. It could be useful to tie it to some event that has just happened. For example, rather than make it all about Wyoming Promise, make it about something that happened in the public sphere. Every day you turn around, there's some new outrage, new example of how money has infected the political system, and you might say, look at what just happened in Congress. This is an example of how money has turned people away from turn our representatives away from ordinary folks, and they're doing the bidding of big money. So you might use that as a hook to start your letter to the editor. For example, there might be a politician that says we should take federal lands and take it over to the state, and which means that they want to turn the state land over to the mining industries or to the logging industries, and it's all about so if public lands are your issue, every time a politician says we need to retake control of federal lands, that's really just an effort to empower moneyed interests, and you can make that your hook, and then say, to fight this, go join Wyoming Promise and help Wyoming Promise put an end to big money. So you can use those kinds of hooks to start your letter off.
Yeah.
I'll agree with that. Ken, this is Shelby Shadwell, Wyoming Promise Treasurer, and I definitely agree with all of that, and just wanted to chime in on a couple of things before we get to questions, especially for new folks on the call. If there is anybody new, and just some general things to say to people, definitely call your representatives on this issue and ask them to sign the petition. We'd like to know from you if your representative in your county is interested in this issue or not, and let us know. You can email me or info@wyomingpromise.org to let us know where our state representatives stand on this issue. I also wanted to say we'll have conference calls every 2 weeks or so, maybe 3 weeks for general volunteers, so please look out for those emails. If you don't get emails from us, please sign up on our website, wyomingpromise.org, and you will get emails from us for sure. That's very important, just so we can all stay in touch. If you would like to take more of a leadership role, if this is your first call, email myself, shelby.shadwell@gmail.com or info@wyomingpromise.org, and we'll set you up in your county with folks that are already there, or if there's no leadership yet, we can get you set up as soon as possible. So definitely visit our website and check that out, because a lot of the things we're talking about, especially as far as letters to the editor and talking to your neighbors, friends and neighbors about this issue, we have a lot of volunteer resources on our website that if you go to our volunteer resources tab at wyomingpromise.org, you can find them immediately. Also, you can like our Facebook page, the statewide Facebook page, if you search for Wyoming Promise, but also some counties have a Facebook page specifically for their counties, Laramie County, Sheridan, and others. So, and if you'd like to set one up for your county, that's awesome. We did ask in the email about this conference call to forward the email to one more person, at least one more person that might be interested in this issue or getting involved in this effort. And we hope that if you can, we'll do a follow-up email on this call. If you can forward that to at least one more person. We're looking to double our circulators from 250 to 500. We have 500 people interested in this effort and volunteers, but we really want to get to 500 circulators. If we had 500 circulators, everybody does one petition packet, and we've exceeded our goal exponentially. So we're really hoping that that's one thing you can do, is get one more person, anybody else on this call, one more person interested in this effort. Also, please consider donating if you can't volunteer. $28 for a 28th Amendment. If we had 1,000 people do that, we'd meet our goal as far as funding is concerned, and we'd get this done immediately. Don't forget, this is a cross-partisan effort. We're not on the left or the right. This is cross-partisan. And just for one last thing you can talk about to folks, WyoFile did a great article on our Senator John Barrasso. Whether you like him or not, he only gets 2% of his campaign funding from in the state of Wyoming. And if that doesn't alarm you, it probably should. So those are the only things I wanted to say before we open it up to questions. So again, thank you for being on the call, and let's open it up to questions, Ken.
Okay, thank you, Shelby. Margie Farias up in Lander has her hand up. So I've unmuted.
Hi, Ken.
Margie. Hi, Margie. How you doing?
Hi, Ken. Hi, Shelby.
Yes.
I was listening intently to what she had to say about letters to the editor. That was all really helpful, and I appreciate that. And I would like to know if that last thing that she read about that she quoted that's in the Laramie paper every week, is that something that we can use when
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Is that something you could put on in an
I'll
email?
put that. Yes, I'll make a note to put that in the list of things. Yeah, we wrote that just to give a general description of what we're about, to get that in the paper, and yeah, that's our verbiage, and everybody can use it. So.
Well, if you don't mind us stealing it.
No, not at all.
we might just do that.
There.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you very
Sure.
much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And Matthew Link has his hand up.
Matthew, you're on. Yeah, hi. I've tried to cajole certain people to write their own letters to the editor for other topics in the past, and one kind of consistent excuse I've heard before is that a lot of people are really they're really intimidated by getting into some sort of argument with someone in the editorial column, and then, becoming getting all sorts of attention they didn't want, or becoming a pariah or something. Can you speak on that? Give some advice, maybe some words of encouragement for people?
Go ahead, Mary Beth.
Well, my advice for something like that is don't engage. If somebody tries to get nasty, I'll just back off. I don't have anything else to offer on that. Do you, Ken or Shelby?
No, other than sometimes it's good to get some pushback and get a conversation going. Don't take it personally if somebody takes offense. But if somebody pushes back on you, they've been listening to you, and you're having a conversation, and conversations are good. Now, if they get nasty, you can ignore them. But if they make a reasonable response, I think that's worth actually engaging with.
Sure, if it's a reasonable response.
Has her hand up. Amanda, do you want to jump in on this too?
Yeah, so I just think that both suggestions to back off when it's obvious the person's not being respectful to you is a really good idea, but then also if you have a more visible stance, if somebody is mean but brings up points that criticize the argument, such as one person mentioned earlier that they've gotten questions about the anonymity, like why is anonymity a problem? If you got something like that in an editorial, then responding to it in a respectful way and focusing on the facts of such as what Al mentioned earlier, Senator Simpson, about that being a problem when it's so much money going into a political system that a person no longer has a voice for if it's an individual donation that's anonymous, that's $500, then that's not going to have the same impact as a corporation donating a regular amount of millions and millions of dollars that other people, like political powers, are now dependent upon, so we don't really get a say as individual citizens. So if we have that in an editorial that is in a public and respectful discourse, then that's for the better. But if a person is disrespectful in response to that, then not engaging with the fight on a personal level is really challenging, and on a personal level I would say that I would have a hard time actually being able to do that. So I do understand people's intimidation and fear at the prospect of starting a fight. But this is an important enough issue that I will make the effort on an individual level to push past my own comfort level and fight this fight because it's important.
Hey, thank you, Amanda. We have, I think, time for one more question, and then I have a few things I want to say to wrap up. Lois Peterson, up in Johnson County, your hand is up, and you're unmuted. Lois, what's your question?
It's actually a comment. When we talked about doing an editorial, I would suggest not wasting that editorial opportunity to put at the end of it what your activity is going to be. If you know the editorial is going in there from somebody, put in there what your activity is, because that's when the fire is hot. You've got to get the people to you, or get you to the people right after that, because otherwise, if it's just an editorial, it'll be forgotten in a week.
Right, that's a good point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lois. There's a few other hands up, but I have a few things I want to say before people jump off the call, and then after I say a few things, if anybody wants to stick around, we can answer some more questions. But I just wanted to give everybody a little bit of an update as to what we're up to now, where we're going, what our plans are going forward. As of right now, we don't have a solid number on how many signatures we have. The amount we have recorded in our database is something like 21 or 22% of the minimum that we need statewide, although on certain counties we're close to 100% or 50, 60, 70% in several counties. So we've had several counties that are knocking it out of the park, but we need 16 counties to get to that number, so we're not there yet. So we're probably we know that there are also people who have petitions with signatures on them that have not been even partially reported to us, so we know that our 20 or 22% is low. We actually have more than that right now. We don't know how much more because some people who have signatures that haven't been turned into a data manager, we don't really know what the full number is. But we're actually encouraged by that number. It sounds low, but we had 18 months from the day the Secretary of State approved our petition to gather the 38,818 signatures that we need. We've used 8 of those months. We have 10 months left to go. So we still have a long ways, a lot of time to be able to gather signatures. And those first 8 months, we spent a lot of time building capacity. We started with, as somebody mentioned, we started with 3 people. And now we have 270, I think is the last number I saw, of circulators. It's still not enough, but if we can get to 500, we can get this done. If we went from 3 to 250 in 8 months, we should be able to get to 500 quickly enough that we're confident that once we can get back out on the streets and start knocking on doors and really hit it hard this spring and summer, we're confident that we're going to get it done. But it is going to require some additional work from all of us to get this done. So that's the first point. Second point I wanted to make is that if you are a petition circulator right now and you have signatures on your petition that you haven't shown to a data manager, please find the data manager for your county or a nearby county and make a photocopy, make a scan, whatever. Keep your petition so you can keep on gathering signatures, but at least show the partially completed pages to a data manager so that we can start entering that data and we'll have a better sense of where we are. We really need that information not just so we can feel good about where we're at, but also to make some strategic decisions about how we're going to deploy our circulators. There are several counties, as I said, Albany County is one of them, that's nearly done. And when they're done, the circulators in those counties might be able to go to neighboring counties. So, for example, the Albany County team might be able to send some people over to Carbon County, where we don't have a strong team organized yet, and get some things done. So we need to make some strategic decisions, and having good data is really critical to our efforts. Our biggest need, as Shelby said, is more circulators. We need if we had 500 signatures, we can get it done. And we're more than halfway there. We have more than half that we need. And so if you are a circulator, if you're not a circulator and you'd like to be, send an email to us at info@wyomingpromise.org, and we'll hook you up with a petition and get you started, get you some training on how to do it. If you are a circulator, try and recruit another one in your county to help out in your county. We need capacity in pretty much every county. So those are some quick things. A couple of very short announcements. Look for an episode of Wyoming Chronicles to be aired on Wyoming PBS. Wyoming Chronicles is a Wyoming PBS television show, half-hour show, once I'm not sure if it's monthly or weekly, how often, but we are going to be featured on Wyoming Chronicles on January 26th. Al Simpson, who we just heard from at the beginning of this call, will do a brief introduction to what we're doing, and then they'll interview several circulators and a number of us. So the show of Wyoming Chronicles, Wyoming PBS, January 26th. It's a Sunday. Mark your calendars to watch it, videotape it, and we'll have a link to the show that we'll be able to put on our website after it airs. Also, look for a movie called Charlie vs. Goliath to be coming to a screen near you sometime this spring. Excuse me. Charlie vs. Goliath is a documentary about Charlie Hardy's run for Congress And Charlie's on the call here. I'll mute Charlie to say anything if he likes to in a second. But when he ran for the Senate in 2014 against a very well-funded Mike Enzi, he ran on a shoestring, and it's a very inspiring documentary of how that happened. We had the documentary. It's a feature-length movie that has won awards at film festivals around the country. It's a very well-done documentary. We had a premiere, the Wyoming premiere in Cheyenne last month, and we're now working on a statewide tour, hopefully using Charlie's bus, to take the movie to screens all over the state. Literally everywhere we can find a place to show it, we want to show it. So if you're interested in helping us screen that, let us know. Again, info@wyomingpromise.org. Please send us an email. But it's going to be shown around the state. Charlie, anything you have to say about the movie?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Charlie.
Okay. Just one other thing, really a compliment to the people who did it. It's going to be shown at the Mumbai International Film Festival in India at the end of this month. Only one of 19 documentaries accepted from around the world, only 3 from the United States. So someone mentioned the Wyoming Promise meeting the other day that the friends who went with them were kind of shocked to see such a professional film. So it doesn't have anything to do with me. It's rather what the whole thing is about. But they did do an excellent job on it.
Okay.
They certainly, Shelby, real quick, I want to tell you all, if you haven't seen it or you haven't heard of it, please look up Charlie versus Goliath. It is a really inspiring movie. It's Wyoming home all together, and so look that up, and we can use, of course, that film, which is a great film, to spread this message of getting money out of politics, because that's really what it's about at a core. And I know Charlie being very humble, but he's amazing, and this movie is amazing. So we should really get that spread around. I just wanted to say that.
Okay, and we have a couple of quick questions. Linda Jackson. No, it wasn't Linda. It was Margie Farias. Margie, you have a question?
I don't really have a question. I had a comment when we were talking about the letters to the editor about confrontation, and I was just thinking, and I wanted to say that, we have 10,000 signatures from people who agree with us, and I think that's a pretty good argument right there.
Right, thank you. Okay, and Bill Lee has your name up. Bill, what's your question or comment?
Yeah, my question was, looking back at Citizens versus United, when the Supreme Court ruled, it opened the floodgates. Did we see exponentially a real large rise? Can we quote that in our article to the editor as far as saying, because of the Supreme Court ruling, we've seen a tenfold increase or a much larger that has really impacted our way of government?
Yeah, I don't have those statistics handy. I don't know if we have anything on the website. We have some information on our website about some of the impacts of this money, but every presidential election cycle has been exponentially larger than the previous one. So there are statistics out there. I don't have them at my fingertips. I don't know if Shelby has them or not. But Shelby, you want to jump in at all?
Yeah, let me jump in on that. So I'm going to do a follow-up email for this conference call and send out all the information we talked about, basically. And I will include those numbers because, yes, especially for congressional races, national congressional races, and Senate races, national Senate races, exponential growth in money spent on these elections. And it's just going to keep going up. And let me get those numbers out to all of the folks on this call because you will be shocked at how that's rising. And yes, that's a good statistic to put in any letter you write or any communication you have with anybody else. So I'll make sure to include that with the follow-up email. And again, if you're not on our email list, again, just go to our website, wyomingpromise.org, sign up to volunteer. It doesn't mean you volunteer. It just means you'll get emails from us.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna put Melody Nielsen on the spot here for just a second. Melody, are you there? I've got a question for you. Yeah, I hear you. All right, Melody, my question for you is, I know that there is a Women's March being organized in Cheyenne on January 20th, and there may be some others around the state. I think there's one starting up in Casper, perhaps. Melody, do you need any help with petition circulators or other kinds of help with getting the word out? I think the Women's March is an opportunity for us to talk to a lot of people who are very engaged and might be willing to sign our petitions. Melody, do you need any help from us over here in Albany or anywhere else to get the petition circulators out there?
Well, I understand that you will be joining us, and that will be helpful, just having as many petitioners as possible. We do have a table for Wyoming Promise, and I'm going to try to get all of our petitioners here. Hopefully most of them show, and hopefully a lot from Albany County, too, would be great.
Okay.
Anyone that wants
several of
to
our
come,
people are happy to get out there.
Yeah, anyone that wants to come is more than welcome. I assume that it seems to be very well put forward, and more people are involved in this again this year.
Good. Excellent. Thank you. And
well,
we
thank
have
you.
one more hand still up. Last question or comment, Lois Peterson. Lois, you are unmuted.
Just a question. I'm looking at the Wyoming PBS website, and it says Wyoming Chronicle. It's got January 26th for Wyoming Promise, but at the top of it, it says Fridays at 7:30, Saturdays at 6:30, and Sundays at 12. Does it repeat or?
Oh, it may repeat. I was told it was going to be on the 26th, but if it's going to be on several dates, that's fantastic.
So if it's on the 26th, it's at 7:30 our time then, right?
Yes. It's all
okay.
Yeah.
Because that would be a nice thing in these editorials to put down again that this is happening, so people have that as a news item.
Right. Excellent. Very good.
We'll get that posted. We'll get that posted for sure, and on our Facebook page for sure. I also wanted to say those folks in Cheyenne, I believe Manda and potentially Kevin Southerberg and we're all going to be there on Saturday for the Wyo Say No campaign launch event for Wyoming Promise. I just wanted to let you know, Melody, there in Cheyenne. So I don't want to keep folks too long myself, so I just want to say thank you all for being on the call. You're Wyoming heroes. You're American heroes, and we're going to get this done. So stick with us, get involved, let us know if you need anything.
And I'll just echo that. Thank you all for joining the call. We went over a little bit longer, but that's okay because I feel there's a lot of enthusiasm still with us, and we've got more work to do, but I'm very encouraged and I'm confident that we're going to succeed. So thank you all for all of your help, and with that, we'll conclude the call. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Wyoming heroes.